Pick a penny up, all day long you'll have good luck. Well, unless you're Sarah Kruger. For her, change isn't about picking up pennies. You're on KXCJLP 105.7 FM, Cave Junction, listening to Empower Hour, where roaring from the soul is our goal. Coming to you right here, right now, is the third episode of Change for a Change. I know, you all must be sitting at the edge of your seats waiting to hear more about Sarah's work at the border. So, I'll make this short. Ish. Maybe. It depends on my mood. Anyway, this intro isn't about me. It's about Sarah. So, that's what I'm going to talk about. If you didn't listen in on last week's episode, then you made a big mistake. Why? Because you missed out on some important information about Sarah and what she's been doing. But don't worry, just pay attention to today's episode and you won't leave empty-headed. In fact, when you finish listening to this, you're gonna have so much knowledge and insight that your head will be twice as big. But don't worry, it won't explode. Oh yeah, and a quick catch-up for everybody. Sarah has been working with No More Deaths on helping immigrants cross the border as safely as possible. Sarah says that the border bridging Mexico and America is a fully militarized, multi-billion-dollar operation. But that is barely the beginning of what immigrants have to cross to get to America. To even make it to the fully militarized multi-billion-dollar operation border, immigrants first have to cross huge deserts that go on forever. And you can imagine that if they are immigrating to America, they most certainly don't have a car. Which means that they have to cross a huge desert on foot. That's really messed up, isn't it? Well, it's still not the end. While immigrants cross the desert, the border sends out military to... Oops, I can't say that. Don't worry, you'll hear more about it in today's episode. Anyway, I really should stop now. So, clear your mind. Open the lock to your heart and get ready to cry, scream, bawl, and stub your toe kicking a table in anger for what you're about to hear. First off, we're going to hear a little bit about what Sarah Kruger has been doing recently, since the last time we heard anything about her was all the way back a week ago.
Just before you were talking about an organization you were doing work with, and before that you were talking about the work you've been doing recently. So, what have you been doing recently? Like, what have you been involved in?
Most recently I've been in Arizona, based in Tucson, working with an organization called No More Deaths, which is a humanitarian aid organization working to bring care, like food, water, medical, and emotional support to migrants in the border region.
So then I thought, who are these people that she's been helping? What are they like?
Do you ever interact with the people you meet? Or do you meet people there in the desert crossing?
Meet people all the time. Yeah.
How do they react when they see you with food and water trying to help?
Most people are very glad that we're there. Oftentimes, we'll meet people after the Border Patrol has kind of scattered them or like gotten they've had some sort of interaction with Border Patrol, and as a result they've lost their group. So oftentimes folks that we meet are lost, and so or hurt and really need the care and the medical aid.
And then I wondered, how did the Border Patrol split groups?
A common thing that I've seen is a helicopter come and hover very close to the tops of people's heads, which would scatter a large group of people out into the desert. And as a result, people that were relying on guides to navigate through the desert find themselves alone.
Have you ever met a child or a mom or a dad or any kind of family member separated from their group and like lost and like having no idea what to do? What happens?
It's very situational. People have different reactions to trauma and stress. People want and need different things. Some people want to keep going. Some people want to turn themselves in and seek asylum. Other people are so exhausted and stressed by the journey that it seems challenging and impossible to continue. That's the thing, is that everyone you meet has their own story and their own needs and reasons for making this potentially deadly, challenging journey. And so everyone's unique experiences drives them to unique places.
Then I wondered, if people go through all of this just to get to America, then what makes them leave their home and their country?
Mostly I've heard for reasons of violence, for reasons of economic, like complete lack of economic opportunities. A lot of Todd Miller is an author that writes a lot about climate change and migration, and he talks a lot about in his book that climate change, specifically in Central America, countries such as Honduras or Guatemala, people that have been subsistence farming for generations, the lack of rainfall is making it impossible for people to grow food in the ways that they have always been able to. And without that ability to grow food, can no longer provide for their families, are coming north. A lot of the policies that are a result of NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Agreement, have made the cost of basic agricultural staples in Central America so high that people can no longer afford them. And there, as a result of economic instability and other factors, a lot of people are facing extreme violence and forced out of their homes and are looking and are needing to come into the United States for better opportunities, for a better life. Also, the United States economic system relies heavily on the labor of undocumented people. And this is nothing new. This is something that, like, in the past, there has been a more open migration policy between the United States and Mexico, where people would come up and work seasonally, farm jobs in the United States, and then be able to go back to their families in countries south of the border. But since the 90s, the militarization and extreme border policies that have been coming out, people, once they're in the United States, can no longer migrate freely between working in this country and going back to their homes. So there has always been a reliance on jobs in the United States for the economies for people in Central America, but the border policy is making it so that once here, you're kind of stuck. You have to stay here.
Now, we've been hearing a lot about how Sarah helps immigrants cross to America and how they live and how they get through it and what goes on when they try to cross. But what we haven't gone through is what actually happens to Sarah when she helps immigrants. Because think about it. If the Border Patrol is so aggressive trying to keep immigrants out of America, then they couldn't possibly act nice to Sarah and what she's been doing.
Have you ever been arrested for helping these people?
I personally have not, but there are 8 people that currently are facing felony charges. 7 of the charges, I believe it's 8. 7 of the charges are for littering, basically putting out food and water for people in a restricted area. And then one activist is currently facing charges for harboring and conspiracy. And these are a lot more serious charges. To learn more about the case, you can go to No More Death's website, and they have a lot more information about how to help fund the legal campaign.
Do they arrest these people? They're people like you who have come to help the organization. Do these people have any money to fight against and get their own lawyers, or are they just arresting them and putting these charges on completely innocent people?
It's pretty clear that the United States government does not like the work that No More Deaths is doing. And by arresting activists, by arresting volunteers, it is putting a tremendous strain on the organization, on both the work that people are doing and obviously on the people themselves, and also on the financial resources of the organization to be able to fight these charges. It's unacceptable that people that are providing humanitarian aid that is life-saving in situations where thousands of people have died are being arrested for doing this work. And the organization, and No More Deaths, is committed to fighting these charges, because this type of humanitarian aid should never be considered a crime.
It shouldn't.
I don't know about you, but hearing all of this ghastly information about the border and how the American government treats people trying to find a better place to live is sickening to me. This is a real problem in the world, and every day immigrants trying to find a home in America get separated from their families, get arrested, and some even die. In fact, just yesterday, an article was released on the New York Times about a man from Honduras who, when trying to cross the American border, was apprehended and separated from his family. He then killed himself. Here's a couple clips from the article. A Honduran man who was separated from his family after he crossed the United States border in Texas with them last month strangled himself in his holding cell, according to Customs and Border Protection officials, public records, and media reports. The man, Marco Antonio Munoz, crossed the Rio Grande with his wife and 3-year-old son in mid-May near Granjeno, Texas.
The Washington Post reported. In a statement, a Customs and Border Protection spokesman said Mr. Munoz was apprehended by Border Patrol agents on May 11th for attempting illegal entry into the United States and taken to the Rio Grande Valley Central Processing Center. Once there, Mr. Munoz and his family said they wanted to apply for the asylum, the Post reported. Border Patrol agents then told them they would be separated. These people are just trying to find a home that isn't like a hovel. They're coming to America because we advertise ourselves as a free country. That's the foundation on which our country was built upon. But you know what immigrants get instead? Well, here's another clip from the New York Times article about what our president is doing about this matter. On May 7th, days before Mr. Munoz was apprehended at the border, Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced that the Trump administration would criminally prosecute everyone who illegally crosses the southwest border in what he called a zero-tolerance policy intended to deter new migrants mainly from Central American countries like Honduras. The policy imposes potential criminal penalties on border crossers, who would have previously faced mainly civil deportation proceedings, and in the process forces the separation of families crossing the border. This is America, and this is what we do to families trying to find asylum from their impoverished hovels in Mexico, South and Central America. But hey, let's all celebrate our freedom every 4th of July and drink beer and eat barbecue when we don't give the time of day to helping immigrants get their own freedom. Welcome to America.